Hello. This is a discussion on theories of urban life. We want to focus on one of the theories called urban anomaly theory. It's an important theory that seeks to explain the lives of members of the urban community and why they tend to differ from those of their counterparts in rural areas. In this theory, we shall focus on what is meant by anomaly. We'll also look at the key arguments of this theory. Then we'll focus on some of the criticisms that have been leveled against this theory. Lastly, we shall look at how this theory have been used to explain some of the socioeconomic problems faced by urban community. Welcome. Let us begin our discussion with an understanding of what anomaly is. Anomaly is understood as a condition in which societies or individuals are characterized by instability, which is thought to result from a breakdown of values and lack of purpose or ideals in life. This term was introduced by one of the founding fathers of sociology, Emile Durkheim, in which he used the term to refer to an upheaval in social values which is occasioned by rapid social change and lack of social order. According to Durkheim, when a social system is in a state of anomaly, common values and common meanings are no longer accepted, and new values and meanings have not been developed. Anomaly is also seen rather a state of anomaly when a social system is in a state of anomaly, it produces in its members a sense of futility, lack of purpose, and emotional emptiness and despair. Broadly, anomaly generally refers to the extent to which there is lack of order, lack of values, lack of ideals, and lack of purpose in society. In that sense, society becomes orderless, and every person decides to act in a manner that he or she deems fit and appropriate at certain circumstances. In that case, therefore, we no longer have common values that unify all members of that particular society. That is the state that we call ANOMIE. In the context of human life, we may understand ANOMIE as a situation in which individuals who have no standards or sense of continuity or obligation and have rejected all social bonds. In other words, when we look at ANOMIE in the context of human life, we are saying that those who suffer from ANOMIE or who experience ANOMIE are those members of the urban community that have no standards to follow, have no sense of continuity, and they feel that they have no obligation to the society because they have rejected all forms of social bonds that exist in those societies, and therefore they remain on their own. Indeed, such individuals may feel that urban community is indifferent to their needs and city life is complex and unpredictable. What this implies is that individuals in an urban setting that experience ANOMIE, generally they find urban community as indifferent. That is, when they look at urban community, they don't find any meaning, they don't find any attachment to that community. They think that the community is not ready to help them, is not ready to bond with them, and therefore they find it a bit complex, a bit unpredictable, and they face difficulties in committing to live with the standards offered by that community, and also in living according to the dictates of the normative values of such a community. These individuals also develop a sense of futility and a conviction that associates are not dependable sources of support. Futility here means that individuals do not think that whatever they try to do will yield any success, and therefore they believe that whether they do something or they don't do something, the results is the same and their conditions will remain as it is. And they also believe and have a firm belief that the people whom they associate with, they cannot depend on them as a source of support. These people are not ready to help them, and therefore they find it not worthwhile to continue associate with them, and in that case they prefer to remain on their own. Based on that background of what ANOMIE is and the kind of experiences individuals in this state show, what then is ANOMIE theory? ANOMIE theory is a theory of city life in which the city is seen to be an anonymous and unfriendly place that carries serious negative consequences for its inhabitants. This theory suggests that the way the city population is structured, it is not friendly, it's not accommodative, it is anonymous. In other words, it is difficult to understand what it is, who it is, what it stands for, and what it's going to do next. And according to this theory, city life is characterized by a lack of social norms, alienation, diffusion of responsibility, and bystander effect. Maybe social norms are basically the things that govern human conduct. So according to this theory, we don't have regulations, we don't have rules, we don't have standards that city population look up to guide them in their daily activities. Alienation refers to the estrangement, division, or distancing of people from each other, from what is important and meaningful to them, or from their own sense of self. Therefore, when you talk about alienation, it simply refers to a situation in which other members of the community tend to move away from you because they think that you are not important to them, or because they think that they have better things to focus on that could be of greater help to them. Diffusion of responsibility refers to a sociological phenomenon whereby a person is less likely to take responsibility for an action when others are present. So when we talk about diffusion of responsibility, we simply mean that the feeling by some people that it is not their duty to take responsibility of what happens because others can as well do it. Another important characteristic of urban community that this theory brings forth is what we call the bystander effect. What is a bystander effect? A bystander effect refers to cases where individuals do not offer any help to a victim in an emergency situation where they believe that others are present. For instance, if an accident occurs in a place, there are people who will not do anything to even to offer first aid or to take the patient, that's the victim of accident, to the hospital. Instead, they will say that is the work of the police, that is the work of the Red Cross, that is the work of St. John's Ambulance, and that's the work of the government. In that case, instead of offering your services as an individual to the victim, you are turning away and saying that it is not your responsibility to do it. Instead, it is the responsibility of others. That is what we mean by the bystander effect. Let us now discuss some of the propositions or key arguments of this theory. One, the theory argues that city is an anonymous and unfriendly place that carries serious negative consequences for its residents. I think this one I've explained a little bit earlier. But let's look at the second proposition. It is the contention of the theory that the sheer size, density, and the diversity of urban life discourages the formation of primary groups such as neighborhood and kinship ties that could offer individuals comfort and socio-emotional support. What this argument is advancing is that the city is such a big place, and given its nature, it's not possible for primary groups such as neighborhood, kinship, families, extended families to function properly. And therefore, the absence of these primary groups robs city dwellers an important opportunity which comes in form of comfort and socio-emotional support. They are deprived of these important social resources that they need for their well-being in cities. The theory further holds that city dwellers take unfriendly and impersonal attitude as a strategy of keeping themselves from becoming personally involved with the people they come into contact with. What this means is that it is the nature of most city dwellers not to take time and to be intimately involved with the people they meet. They are impersonal. For instance, you meet a person that you had known some years back, maybe you attended the same school, or you had worked in the same organization earlier, and when you meet a person, instead of having a candid and close discussion, you may realize that either you or the person you have met is saying that he's busy, he's going somewhere, he's late for work, he's late for interview, he's late for some shopping, he's late. Therefore, all these make it difficult for people to have a hearty conversation and for people to bond. This is because it is the nature of city dwellers to have an unfriendly and impersonal attitude towards others. And this they do as a strategy so as not to get personally involved with the people they meet. Such people may not even be honest about where they work, about where they stay, about what they are doing, about the promises they offer you. It is because the impersonal nature and the unfriendly nature of city forces such individuals to behave in such a queer manner. The last one is that lack of intimate ties and pursuit of individual rather than collective goals is responsible for the state of mental illness, crime, and juvenile delinquency among city dwellers. Indeed, comparatively, between urban and rural communities, some of these problems such as mental illness, crime, and juvenile delinquencies are more common. Incidents are quite higher in urban areas compared to rural areas. And this is so because of lack of intimate ties, which could have been so much important in terms of instilling a sense of comfort and a sense of belonging among individuals. This is lacking among city population, and because of that loneliness, we are experiencing more cases of social problems, including mental illness, crime, juvenile delinquency, prostitution, among others. As I noted earlier, this theory has been used to explain some of the problems that urban communities face. One of these problems is crime. ANOMIE theory is used to explain the high prevalence of crime and delinquent behaviors in urban areas. And the theory argues that the drivers of crime in diversified societies such as urban areas arise from tension between the casual goal of success through wealth obtainment and the reality that such wealth is unrealistic for many to obtain. In other words, the nature of urban life is that every person is being told to be successful. Successful in terms of what? You must live in a good place, you must drive, you must take nice and expensive alcohol, you must clothe well, and all those other things that are important markers of success. But again, not everyone have the opportunity to obtain success in a legitimate way. Some do not have money to start businesses. Some do not have job opportunities because of their ethnic background. Some do not have requisite educational qualification to work in certain positions, and others are not able to access these opportunities because of various reasons. And therefore, because of this, the temptation, the lack of legitimate opportunities, legitimate means to succeed and to access what is thought to be important markers of success in city community forces some people to now embrace crime as a means of achieving success. In other words, the person who is alienated feels worthless and realizes the futility of their efforts in achieving success in a socially legitimized systems. In that case, therefore, such individuals are tempted at all times to use illegitimate means to achieve this success. For this reason, there will be so many cases of robbery, there are so many cases of individuals trying to achieve success by making fake currencies, by selling illicit drugs, illicit alcohols, and engaging in other practices that the law does not permit. All is being done with one main objective: success. And this success becomes what is most emphasized among the urban communities. Yet, the legitimate means to achieve this success is not available to all. Those for whom it is easier for them to achieve success through legitimate means will employ legitimate means. However, those who find it hard to pursue success through legitimate means will employ means that are not permitted, and some of these means border on criminality. Another urban social problem that this theory has been used to explain is suicide. Suicide, of course we know, it refers to all cases of death resulting from a direct conscious action of the victim. Suicide such as ANOMIE, suicide is attributed to moral deregulation and a lack of definition of legitimate aspirations through restraining social ethics. If you remember Durkheim's theory of suicide, one of the types of suicide he thought of is called anomaly suicide, which he blamed on lawlessness or a state of normlessness in society. So we are saying that urban societies, because of individual pursuit and because of lack of sufficient mechanisms to force individuals to follow certain predetermined norms and traditions, people tend to live on their own, and because of this, they will lack the much needed social support that they need to overcome some of the challenges that they may face in life. Now, when we lack a sense of belongingness, we are not properly integrated, and we are not pursuing collective good in society, we are likely to commit suicide, because studies have shown that loneliness, lack of integration, and individual pursuit of success are some of the main drivers of suicide. These are more prevalent in urban communities because of the emphasis on success and without providing equal opportunity to all. Like I observed earlier, urban communities emphasize on success. However, the opportunities to achieve this success is only available to the few. So those who find it difficult to achieve success, some might engage in crime, but some might be overcome by stress, depression, and mental instability, leading to suicide. So lack of proper integration among urban communities has been observed as one of the causes of suicide. So ANOMIE has been used by scholars to try to understand why urban communities tend to experience more cases of suicide compared to their rural counterparts. And studies have shown that part of the reason why this is possible is because of lack of belongingness, lack of adequate integration, and lack of pursuit of a collective good. Anomaly theory has also been used to try to explain or account for prevalence of violence in urban areas compared to rural areas. This theory suggests that there are situations in society where pre-existing rules are no longer regulating human behaviors. If rules are not sufficient or they do not exist to regulate human behaviors, people tend to invent new rules that in order for them to manage the situation. However, some of these new rules may not be accommodative to others, and in the process they may be injurious to others. Individuals, where rules are not adequate or are completely acting, they tend to act outside what is considered normal to the group. In other words, they start to act abnormally, because any human activity or action that is thought to be outside what is normatively accepted is considered to be abnormal. For instance, inadequate or absent regulations to effectively manage crimes such as theft, may force people to act outside the regulations. Now, how would individuals, members of society, act outside the regulations? They may resort, for instance, to mob justice to deal with criminals in the neighborhoods. This might be on the belief that wherever these criminals are arrested, they are not charged, they are not punished, and therefore they come back to again disturb community's peace. So, for communities now to act in a manner that suggests that they are now acting outside the rules that are available, then they now invent their own rules, some of which may be bordering on violent conduct, such as mob justice. However, mob justice may not arise in a situation whereby criminals are apprehended, prosecuted, and convicted, so that where adequate punishment is offered to the criminals, to the offenders, it is not easy for members of the party or of the public to take the law into their own hands. Therefore, inadequate regulations such as complicity of the law enforcement agencies in terms of handling crimes may escalate communal defiance to existing regulations. The regulations might mean that do not harm a person, even if caught in the act. Let the law handle the matter. But members of the community might now decide to act outside this regulation if, in the opinion, there are valuable institutions that are meant to maintain law and order are not doing their part, either because of inadequate infrastructure or because of complicity by the law enforcement institutions to manage the situation. Therefore, law enforcement sector that pursues own interest by taking sides instead of preventing crimes may result in ANOMIE, in anomaly setting. And once that ANOMIE arises, it will prompt members of the public to behave in a manner to fill the vacuum that is left by weak enforcement of the law. However, this might encourage violence. This is why we are saying that urban areas, because of lawlessness and weak institutions to provide moral compass, is likely to encourage alternative means of enforcing law and order, most of which may border on violence. Let's now look at the criticisms that have been leveled against anomaly theory. One of the criticisms is that anomaly theory has been biased towards the lower class in their struggle with limited resources to obtain their goals and achieve success in life. And the theory has therefore failed to explain white-collar crime, which has nothing to do with limited opportunities. Indeed, the perpetrator of white-collar crime is the upper class, who has numerous opportunities to achieve success through legal and legitimate means. For instance, why do we have cases of corruption in government being perpetrated by government officers who are paid well, who have political power, who have businesses, who have connections, and who basically don't lack anything to drive them into commission of such crime? According to critics of this theory, anomaly theory has tended to link crime only to lack of resources and limited opportunities. And critics think that by doing so, they have ignored other types of crimes that are motivated not by inadequate resources, not by inadequate opportunities, but by desire to have more and more, rather the lust for power and the lust for accumulation of resources, such as white-collar crimes. Another criticism that has been leveled against this theory is the myth of weak regulations. The assumption by the theory that individuals behave abnormally due to lack of or inadequate regulations does not apply in all situations. For instance, look at coercive institutions such as prison. Cases of prisoners acting outside the regulations exist in prisons despite the coercive nature of these institutions. Some of the institutions with very tough and tight regulations are rather prisons. However, despite the existence of such tough regulations, we still have cases of prisoners and other law enforcement agencies engaging in crime or behaving in an abnormal manner. This therefore suggests that the absence of regulations is not the only driver of abnormal behavior. There are also instances where custodians of institutional norms, such as priests, pastors, and other highly esteemed office holders, have acted outside the normative expectations, despite the presence of clear and adequate regulations. Of course, we know religious leaders, priests, and officials, and other spiritual leaders. They are the moral custodians of our institutions. They are the moral custodians of our society. But despite holding such esteemed positions, and despite being surrounded by adequate rules, adequate regulations, we still find them acting outside the normative expectations of our society. For instance, pastors have been accused of sodomy, rape, adultery. Some have engaged in theft, others have engaged in murder. These are abnormal behaviors that are being perpetrated by individuals who are meant to be the custodians, who are meant to offer moral compass to society. What this means, therefore, is that the absence of regulations, norms, and values is not the only cause of ANOMIE. ANOMIE is also possible where regulations are there, and therefore examples of priests or other religious leaders are quite important in rebuking the fact that in rebuking the passion by ANOMIE theorists that normlessness only comes in where order or regulations are lacking. The other criticism that has also been given to this theory is one to do with the fact that the theory ignored individual factors that lead to ANOMIE. For instance, the theory failed to consider individual factors in the perpetration of crime or disorderly conduct. For instance, studies have found that some individuals have personality traits of negative emotionality and low constraints. Such individuals are impulsive, overly active, and quick to lose their tempers. So that personality traits of negative emotionality increases individuals' level of self-injury, creates a desire for retaliation or revenge, and energizes the individual towards disobedience of the established order. So, this theory neglected the fact that certain disobedience of order has nothing to do with the overall order or overall regulations or normative standards in the community, but rather are more to do with certain individual traits, So individual factors in the contribution of ANOMIE has been largely ignored by these theorists, and this has been pointed out by scholars as one of the most significant failures or weaknesses of this theory.